Does inflation hurt the poor, middle class, or the rich? In today's video, I will make the case that inflation is already here. Then I will answer the question whether the poor, middle class, or the rich gets hurt by inflation. The answer may surprise you. Lastly, I will suggest actions you can take to hedge against inflation. Believe it or not, we're literally swimming in money. The US government is printing trillions of dollars currently, between the Federal Reserve's quantitative easing and the federal government's stimulus packages. Yes, we're recovering from the recent economic crisis, thanks to these monetary and fiscal policies. But are we creating too much money? I mean, whether you're poor, middle class, or the rich, most of you received money in some form or the other. The lower income got stimulus checks. The jobless received large unemployment benefits. The homeowners saw rising home prices. Renters received protections and reliefs. Business owners were granted loans, and investors benefit from a bull market. With so much money floating around, the intelligent you must ask, is inflation coming? Inflation is basically the change in prices, and price is the amount of money divided by the quantity of goods, services, and assets. With so much new money flooding the economy and the market, and the amount of goods, services, and assets remaining unchanged, some economists are predicting higher inflation. But those of you who follow economic data may say, aren't current inflation pretty weak? Yes, you're referring to the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, that measures a basket of goods and services for a consumer. A gallon of milk and a haircut haven't gotten more expensive. But you've all heard these narratives. Wow, home prices are so expensive now. Or wait, I thought we were in a recession. Then why are the stock markets so high? Well, the answer is asset inflation. After the Fed lowered interest rate, cash and bonds now yield virtually zero. So all the money in the market have overflowed to stocks and real estate, pushing stock prices and home prices higher. So there you go. Asset inflation is already here. When prices rise, your purchasing power decreases. You can buy less goods, services, and assets. Your money effectively lost value. Okay, we know inflation makes your money worth less, but whom does inflation hurt more? The poor, middle class, or the rich? You may guess inflation hurts the rich because the rich has a lot of money. It is not as simple as it seems. Yes, the rich has a lot of money, but their money is in the forms of assets like real estate, stocks, and businesses. Asset inflation helps their assets increase in value. The rich has a very small percent of their wealth in the form of cash, so their overall purchasing power doesn't get eroded away with inflation. The rich has not only a lot of assets, but also a lot of debt. When inflation decreases the value of money, it also decreases the value of debt. So inflation actually decreases how much debt the rich owes and increase their net worth. Yes, the rich gets richer. Then you may guess, oh, then inflation hurts the poor. Actually, not entirely. Poor people have very little cash and savings, so inflation doesn't hurt them. In fact, inflation may even help those with negative net worth because the debt they owe now worth less. Inflation helps the poor in another way because a big portion of living for the poor comes from wages, and wage growth actually positively correlates to inflation. Inflation helps the poor earn more. However, the poor are disproportionately hurt by having very little assets. The recovery has been characterized by asset inflation. But the poor is eligible to many of the government support, like recent stimulus checks, added unemployment benefits, and other protections. This is especially true during this pandemic. Being poor sounds really good, doesn't it? So whom does inflation hurt more? The middle class. Middle class usually holds a higher percentage of its net worth in cash, and cash loses value in an inflationary environment. Most of the consumption in the economy comes from the middle class. Inflation of goods and services directly hurts the middle class. Some middle class has a lot of assets that are actually liabilities because the cost of maintenance increases and they don't produce income. I'm talking about the big houses, fancy cars, and the toys middle class families love. But doesn't the rich have them too? Yes, but these unproductive assets are only a tiny percentage of their net worth. The rich can afford to throw away money while the middle class can't. The redistribution of wealth resulted from inflation doesn't happen just from the middle class and the poor to the rich. It also happens between these groups. Skilled labor's wages and salaries kept up with inflation better versus the less skilled labor. Asset owners kept up with inflation than non-asset owners. Debtor gained from inflation because they repaid creditors with dollars that are worth less in terms of purchasing power. Inflation resulted from fiscal spending transfers wealth from the taxpayers to the beneficiaries. No matter which group you're in, there are things you can do to hedge against inflation. How to hedge against inflation? The answers are changing your asset allocation and improving your biggest asset. First, changing your asset allocation. Inflation dilutes the purchasing power of cash. So instead of saving predominantly in cash, allocate to productive assets like real estate or stocks. We can have two households starting with exactly the same education and income who end up with wealth that are multiple times different. Why? Maybe because one family decided to purchase their own home or invested in the stock market 10 years ago, and the other family didn't. Second, improve your biggest asset, you. Your intelligence is the best hedge against inflation. Going back to the definition of price, money over assets. If you invest in yourself, your health, your skills, experience, and ability to execute and connect, good money will come. These things appreciate over time. Now you understand how inflation works, how inflation affects the poor, middle class, and the rich, and how to hedge against inflation. Thank you for stopping by. Please subscribe if you haven't done so. Smash the like button and comment below. You can support me by sharing my content with your family and friends. Thanks again. I gotta go hedge some inflation now. See you next time.